And we're back. So this time we are doing the Mage cards. First card we'll be doing is the Flame Leviathan. This is a 7 mana 7/7 mech with, when you draw this, deal 2 damage to all characters. Where
Yeah.
do I begin?
So this is a really cool mechanic.
Actually, I'm not going to begin. You do it.
Um, it's a really cool mechanic because stuff happening when you draw cards is um, really interesting. Stuff that happens when the card is in your hand before you've even played it. Um, however, uh, dealing 2 damage to all characters is somewhat risky because if you can't control when it happens, it's as likely to help you as hurt you.
Yeah.
And in the sort of deck where you would want to play Flame Leviathan, just because a random board nuke is going to be good because you're not going to have that many minions on the board.
But then your opponent
You
knows
have to
exactly
face up
when
to
to
the
play
fact
around
that
it.
when you draw a Flame Leviathan, it's a 7 mana 7/7, and those kind of things like Freeze Mage don't tend to want to play War Golem.
Yeah.
Um,
And your opponent's like, oh, I better save this Hex. He has a 7 mana 7/7 in his hand.
oh yeah, that's the other thing that they know that it's there. So this is one of the less good cards for Mage.
I think it might be the worst class legendary. It's definitely competing for it. It's worse than Malorn, which is impressive. So this,
Yeah.
it's close. It's either this or Bolivar. I think. Actually, I think it is Flame Leviathan, to be honest. Anyway, Echo of Medivh, the most combo-centric card in the entire set. 4 mana, Echo of Medivh, epic. Put a copy of each friendly minion into your hand. Now, I don't know if this card is good or not. I actually don't think it is. But there is some hilarious stuff you can do with this just for fun. Like, you get to 10 life and you go Molten, Molten, Sun Fury, Echo. And if they kill those, you go Molten, Molten, Sun Fury, Echo.
Yeah.
You can also go like Molten, Molten, Duplicate, Duplicate, Molten, Molten, Echo, Molten, 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 Echo, 6 Moltens in your hand.
Yeah. So this is like quite an interesting card. There's some different stuff that you can do with it. So one thing that you can do with it is play a board for future minions and follow it up.
Wisps!
Yeah, wisps, and then follow it up with an echo to like refill your hand full of all those cards. But that might not be that great, just because if you're playing like such an aggressive strategy, you don't really want to spend your turn four just drawing a bunch of
I
crappy
feel like
cards.
Duplicate would be better.
And like, yeah, you have to have so much of a board for it to be better than Arcane Intellect. Um,
Well, you need 2 cards really to make it better than Arcane Intellect, so you know what you're drawing.
well, I mean, it costs 4 mana, so you need at least three, really.
I think there's one situation where this is good. Well, in Arena, I played against this like twice, and it's been really good in both those situations. But in the way I see this, and this is where I go from Arena, is that if you get an opportunity to play Echo, and this fits in the only a one of, because if you draw 2, it's miserable. So if you get a situation where you can play Echo, generally the things still on the board are the better minions. So you get to draw those. I mean, I'm like, I feel like this card is very, very difficult to figure out exactly how good it is immediately. It's a bit like how Duplicate was very hard to evaluate at first, if you
Yeah.
remember.
But I mean, like, if you compare those cards to Duplicate, right? So Duplicate's way easier to get off because you can play the Duplicate and then you can play your Sylvanas and know that even if you know that like it doesn't have to stick around. Like if it dies straight away, then you get your Sylvanas.
There is Kazan Mystic, though.
Well, that's true, but I doubt that would be particularly relevant. And the other thing is that Duplicate is often free because you get it off the Scientist.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I did call my Duplicate Mage when I first made it Gush, which for anyone who doesn't know is a magic card that you draw 2 cards for free, because that's what the deck does
Right.
half of the time.
And yeah, so Echo of Medivh is a bit like isn't very much like Duplicate because Duplicate you want to kind of duplicate the really high value minions, but with Echo of Medivh the high value minions aren't that great with it because like if you duplicate one can, you've played a 10 mana can, which is
Yay!
a bit subpar.
Yeah, that's
So
not
I mean,
as good.
Echo of Medivh has an interesting and unique enough effect that like there's probably going to be some interesting way to use it that we just can't see yet. But
It might be a one-of as well in those decks. Instead of like 1 Arcane Intellect, you play 1 Echo.
yeah,
because sometimes you just don't want to overcommit into the board. You'd rather just draw all of your board.
I mean, the Molten Giant scenario is interesting, but how many Molten Giants does one man really need?
I have no idea, but the real question with Echo is how many can you fit on the board?
Oh, that too.
The
Only
answer
one
is
of them can
7.
win the brawl after all.
The funny thing is that it's like if you actually get into the situation where you can echo twice on Molten Giants, your opponent can Twisting Nether you twice and you still have a full board of giants. Like it's just ridiculous, but and you can play duplicates and you get more giants, but it's like Magical Christmas Hand scenario where it's literally like Jaina playing with her food at that point. It's like,
Yeah.
how many giants can I get? I have no idea. But it's just hilarious. I'm gonna build that deck just when I'm really bored one day. I'm gonna build that deck and I'm gonna win one game, but it's gonna be spectacular.
Yeah, I mean, you can do some really cool stuff with this card.
But I'm not sure how good it is. It needs testing. It's very difficult to evaluate. It needs testing. We'll have to see. We Spell Stomper, 2 mana. Wait, no, not 2 mana 4/5. 4 mana 2/5. Significant difference there. Adjacent minions can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. This gives the Fairy Dragon effect to things next to it. I'm not calling it a Spectral Knight effect because Fairy Dragon came first. But anyway, so the stats are bad. We talked about this with what was it
Arcane
called?
Nullifier.
Arcane Nullifier, yeah. And I've played against this a few times in Arena, mostly off piloted Sky Golems, but it hasn't been that good to be honest. But
Yeah, I
that's a
mean,
really minion-centric format, so
so the benefits are that you can kind of protect your minions from spells. You can stop your one health guys from getting pinged. Um, you can protect taunts or important stuff from dying to a
protect your Mech
spell.
Warper.
But
Yay!
it's like unlikely that any of those targets will be high priority enough that taking the playing a wee spell stopper will be like less good than just threatening them with a Yeti that they also have to remove.
Yeah,
Or
exactly. Not to mention, the other argument here is like you can use Wii Spell Stomper to stopper, not Stomper. That'd be a cooler name. But anyway, you can use the Spell Stopper to protect Mech Warper and things like that. But then I'd rather just play a Goblin Blast Mage, deal 4 to them, and then if they remove it, I deal an extra 5.
yeah, um,
Like, that just seems better, arguably. So, I don't like it.
no, it's not a very good card.
I don't like it. I prefer to have the effect on itself with like other cards like Spectral Knight.
Yeah, and if you're doing that, you can play Arcane Nullifier, which we already agreed is not that great. So,
Yeah,
Wii Spell Stopper is not a very good card.
exactly. Alright, Goblin Blast Mage. 4 mana 5/4. Battle Cry. If rare, first of all, Battle Cry. If you have a mech, deal 4 damage randomly split among all enemies. I have got this effect off once in Arena. I've only drafted it once in Arena. It was good when I didn't get it. It was very good when I did get it. Good card in Arena. Constructed, however, this is the interesting bit.
Yeah, I mean the baseline is pretty good. 4 mana 5/4. It's not as good as a Yeti or I guess the new standard for 4 drops is Piloted Shredder. Keep having to remind myself of that. But and in fact, it does trade extremely badly with
Yeah,
Piloted
it's
Shredder.
really bad against Piloted Shredder.
Because you're going to like hit their Piloted Shredder twice, and it's going to be a 4/1, and then it's going to trade.
There's going to be one guy who's just like
Um,
hits it 3 times.
Yeah,
Every time.
and then they get a light well. But yeah, I mean, and then if you have a mech, you get a free Arcane Intellect, but Arcane Missiles out of the
Arcane
deal,
Intellect would be
but
insane on a 4 mana 5/4.
which is pretty good, right? This is the reason to play mechs
In Mage.
in
Yeah.
Mage.
That, and they have
And
2 mechs, which also fit there. So,
yeah,
Mage is actually looking pretty strong as far as mechs goes. This is ridiculous on curve after like a spider tank.
yeah. Or you could play like a Harvest Golem to make sure that you have a mech around for your Blast Mage.
True.
That would be good too. And against like a lot of decks, like all the Hunter and all the random stuff that they have on the board around turn 4, and those difficult to clear up spiders.
This
Blast Mage
wrecks
might be really good.
spiders.
And
Wipes them out.
if nothing else, then like 4 damage to face is pretty good in a kind of more aggressive mage deck. The only problem with this card is like You kind of want to play this, but you kind of also want to play Water Elemental. But if you're playing mechs, you kind of also want to play Piloted Shredder, and it's all a bit awkward, and you've got too many 4 drops, and
I think the
something as good is
split
going to have
is
to be
gonna
cut.
be if you're running a bunch of mechs, you run Blast Mage, and if you're not, you're running Water Elemental because Blast Mage does more damage, which is more of a threat.
Yeah, um,
If you're running
I think
Duplicate, you want Water Elemental.
yeah, I
That's
think you're
the other
probably
thing.
right. Um, so yeah, Goblin Blast Mage is a really really strong card.
I like it. It's also good against Warrior because when you play it, if you have a mech on the board, basically you play it and it shreds all of their armor. So they
I
can't
don't think it's that
actually.
great against Warrior because
If they have an Acolyte, it's terrible, but then you have a
if they
mech
have an
on the board.
Acolyte or an Armor Smith, or they can just Death Spite it, it's
But then they have a mech on the board, and if they death bite it, they just took 9 damage.
mm,
And
yeah. I
there's
mean, it's
still a
not as good as a
mech
Water
hitting
Elemental
them.
against Warrior, but
I mean, Water Elemental's better, but like the point is, Mage 4 drops are kind of generally okay against Warrior.
yeah,
Because Goblin Blast Mage, like, it's bad against Deathbite, as in it dies to it, but it also just Pyroblasted them.
yeah.
So I'm not
Um,
sure how bad that is. But and the other thing is, I thought about Acolyte of Pain, but then if the mech on board is a spider tank, it just kills the Acolyte.
right.
So that's a thing. So I think Blast Mage is actually a decent card overall. Suit Spear. Yes, no, Soot Spear.
Soot Spear.
Yes, Suit. That would be an
Oh.
interesting card.
So Soot Spear.
3 mana, 3/3 spell damage +1 mech rare.
The Rich Man's Kobold Geomancer. Um, this card is okay. So
It's interesting.
it's better than Kobold Geomancer.
Oh yeah, yeah by far.
So it's just it. Um,
Better than
so
Ogre
the
Magi as well.
yeah. But we're only saying this because 3 mana 3/3s tend to be better than 2 mana 2/2s because 2 mana 2/2s get eaten by 2 3/3s, whereas 3 mana 3/3s don't have the same problem until now,
Hero power.
because now they get eaten by Spider Tank.
That's
Um,
true, but you can hero power, and the other thing
yeah,
this allows you to
I mean,
do is Frostbolt 3/4s if you're going first.
yeah, which is very strong. The spell damage is kind of useful. Is it more useful than the extra point of health on a Spider Tank, or the stickiness of a Harvest Golem, or
Maybe.
the value of a Tinkertown Technician?
Well, no, Tinkertown would be in the same deck. Like,
Yeah, I mean, my point is those are the competitors in the 3 slot, right?
yeah, I think the real competitor is Spider Tank Harvest Golem, like those three, and I could actually see running 5 3 drops where you run two. You could run like two. You could run 4 mechs and then one Tinkertown, or depending on your mech count, obviously, or like 2 Tinkertown and then 3 other 3 drop mechs, and you can tinker around with that. Wow, I actually just did that. Anyway, tinker around with them a bit, and you just got it. The other thing is with Soot Spear, you can Frostbolt ping a Sludge Belcher.
Yeah, I mean, you can do some cool stuff with the spell damage.
That's surprisingly relevant. So it might be good enough. It is a mech still, so it might be good enough
On turn
to
10, you can play a 5 damage Flame Strike.
actually. I mean, yeah, it's like almost struggled with that, but it is relevant that it does have the Blood Mage Thalnos effect, where it's not that bad on turn or later on in the game because the spell power still scales fairly well.
Yeah. The problem with Mage actually is that spell power doesn't actually do that much for them, and that's why you see quite a lot of aggressive Mage decks not running Blood Mage. I
Blood
mean,
Mage
yeah,
also just doesn't go down on
yeah,
curve.
it's kind of like anti tempo, but like spell power Fireball is not so great.
True.
Uh,
Spell power Frostbolt is probably the better one you can think of.
yeah.
But that seems to be the main, and Arcane Missiles maybe, but I'm
Mm,
not sure if Spell Power 1 is really worth losing the 1 life. I think that's the major debate here.
yeah, definitely.
We'll have to
Um,
see.
Especially since it's so important to keep your 3 drop mech on the board so that you can play your Blast Mage.
Exactly. But anyway,
Um,
Snow Chugger, the other mech for Mage. 2 mana 2/3 mech with the Water Elemental effect. Freeze any character damaged by this minion. I think this is good and playable, not because of the effect, but because it is a 2 mana 2/3 mech.
Yeah, and the effect is decent.
It does
It
stop
means
weapons.
that even if your opponent gets like a favorable trade on the Snow Chugger, their minion is still going to be frozen for a turn. So
And you can hero power it twice if you need to.
yeah,
That
you can
works.
kind of
Also,
um,
you can play it on turn 1, and if their response is Fiery War Axe, you can actually play Mech Warper. Like, this is the ultimate dupe, by the way, against Warriors. You play Snow Chugger turn 1, they know that if they don't play Axe now, it's
no, no,
frozen for the rest of
yeah,
time, and if they Axe it, you can play your Mech Warper and they can't
mm.
kill it.
or play a second Snow Chugger and they're never going to use their axe again.
It just
So yeah,
locks them out of the game.
like the freeze effect isn't that useful. Right, okay, so the freeze effect isn't as useful as it is on Water Elemental.
Because it
Because the
dies
thing
more
about
easily.
Water Elemental is that the way Water Elemental's stats are distributed, it's got so much health that you kind of want to kill it by attacking it,
Yeah.
because it's the only efficient way to do it.
And it freezes everything that hits it.
And then even if you do get an efficient trade on it by attacking it, you can't the freeze messes you up.
It's just a nightmare, basically, is the point. You can't really get rid of it easily, and it's just annoying. And Snow Chugger, the effect is weaker than it is on Water Elemental, but the mech and the things like that help it out. So it kind of feels like just a 2 mana 2/3 mech in most matchups, but then against Rogue, which has Deadly Poison, which is a major thing for killing 2/3s, against Warrior in particular, it's really, really good.
I mean, it's a strong card.
And against Paladin, because
I mean, weapons are going to be quite relevant, we think.
that is true. And Snow
Clashes,
Chugger becomes better because of that. Like, it dies immediately, but the point is, if you kill it on your turn, your weapon is frozen for effectively another turn after that.
Yeah.
So you still can't attack with it, and that is quite relevant if you're trying to protect something. And because it's 2-drop, as I said, you can kind of dupe people, because they're not just going to leave a Snow Chugger on the board if they're a weapon class.
Right.
Like, they have to kill it, so it does mess with them. And it also gets even worse if they have, like... Because then you can go Snow Chugger, and if they save removal from Mech Warper, you just play Mech Warper, they kill it, and you're like, sure, Tinkertown. Still for Mech.
Yeah.
And then your Snow Chugger does 6 damage, and it's just... Like, having 2/3 mechs in... Like, having access to 4 copies of a 2/3 mech in a deck is actually way more relevant than it first sounds.
Right. Yeah, because they'll use their removal and you can...
And this is better than the Robo Teddy. That's for sure. I think. It is. I think it's better because even with Mech Warper, you can't go like turn 1 Mech Warper and then something else to protect it from weapons.
I mean, it's less good against stuff like Northshire Cleric and Voidwalker, but yeah.
Yeah, that's true. But then Mage is a better class for mechs.
This is true. They got better mech support.
That is true. They have tech support, if you will.
Oh, Jotto.
That was bad. Anyway.
Oh, Jotto, you handsome fool.
Yeah, the in Arena, it's actually pretty good. I played against it a lot.
Okay, so.
Alright, Unstable Portal. 2 mana. Add a random minion to your hand. It costs 3 less. I have heard and seen some weird things, including this card. From High Mains to Jaraxxus on turn 8.
To 6.
No, it happened on turn 8. It was on Noxus' stream.
Oh, right.
He just randomly played Jaraxxus on turn 8. I was just like, oh, okay. And it's just, there's some weird things that happen with this card, and it's kind of amusing. And it also has the weird reminder text when you play the card you get off it. It's like, created by Unstable Portal. And it's like, yeah, no kidding. The cost was 3 less.
So, like, yeah. Unstable Portal, in the best case, you get, like, one of the best cards in the game, and you get to play it for 1 mana less, which is a huge deal. But you have the disadvantage that you might get one of the worst cards in the game.
If you get a 1-drop, it's bad.
Yeah, you might get a card that costs 1 or less mana, in which case you actually screwed yourself. And
you get a Wisp.
The stats are that happens somewhere between 10 to 15% of the time. You get a Wisp and you lose. The problem with thinking about cards like this is, so back before Naxxramas was released, everyone thought Webstone was going to suck. And part of that reason is that effects that are like this random and with the possible values like distributed so widely that you have to actually play it to get a feel for how often you're going to get something good.
So hard to evaluate these kinds
Um,
of cards.
so it's possible that take everything we say here with a pinch of salt. But Unstable Overwater has the second problem that any minion you get, even if it's good, isn't going to be like fitting with the plan of your deck. Um, so you might get a good early minion that's whereas you're playing more control, you might get some like might get your access when really all you wanted to do was burn your opponent down as fast as possible.
I
So
think
I
if
don't know what
this
kind
is
of deck.
constructed, this is a mid-rangey card.
What kind of deck does Unstable Portal seem playing?
I think this is going to be like a mid-rangey card, kind of like the weird duplicate mage that Strife Crow was playing, where it's just like
That wasn't a mid-range deck.
it was like a all right. It wasn't
That was
mid-rangey.
like the slowest control deck in the world. It beat
It was
Handlock by fatigue.
weird. It was weird. Like, but the point is that one of the reasons that deck was he described it as a mediocre good deck because its like game plan changed radically depending on the draw it got.
Yeah.
So it just did weird things, and Unstable Portal kind of fits that kind of archetype where its game plan changes depending on what it draws, because it means that no matter what you get, unless you get a one drop obviously, but no matter what you get, if you get value out of the Unstable Portal, you can shift your game plan slightly to accommodate it.
Yeah, and your opponent doesn't know what you're going to do, which is pretty beneficial. You can't play around that turn 4 Baron Geddon.
Yeah, it's very difficult to play around that mage deck, let alone if he's playing Unstable Portals.
But yeah, so I mean, this is a really interesting card. Very high
It's very
variance.
good in Arena. I've seen this in
Um,
Arena quite a few times. I haven't seen
yeah,
it do bad things in Arena. It's been pretty good so far.
because in Arena, you're already choosing from a selection of random bad cards. Um,
True.
so getting a random bad card for 1 mana less makes it a good card.
Yeah, and it also means that you effectively draw a card. Like, you get to cycle something through. So it's just, you basically just substitute it for something else, and that's fine. It's not Farsight. It's completely different to Farsight. Just like Colpet is completely different to Farsight, and that was like the thing that people said immediately. It was like, oh, it's just like Farsight. Stop making these. No, just
Yeah,
Farsight's the worst one. No,
I mean it's miles
Holy
better than
Wrath is
Farsight.
the worst one.
But you can Holy Wrath and get Molten Giant.
Yeah, and you can Farsight and get Lightning Storm against a Zoo.
Um,
Someone is going to
yeah,
Unstable Portal into Geddon on like turn 6 and wipe someone's board. It's going to happen.
yeah.
Abomination, go. But this is definitely one of the most hilarious cards, along with Echo of Medivh. So, I like the card. I don't know how good it is, though. We'll have to see.
Yeah, we'll see. I predict that it probably won't see constructed play, but yeah, I could be horribly wrong about that.
I think I'll go with you in the same boat here, and if we're horribly wrong, then we'll just take the full like we did on Sludge Belcher.
I haven't actually rewatched our review of Sludge Belcher.
Basically, actually, I rewatched it, and a lot of people were like, you said it was terrible, and I rewatched it. We actually didn't really say that. We just said it was the laziest design in history, and it is.
Yeah, I remember you complaining about that, but anyway, back to the present.
But anyway, yeah, back to the present, or technically the future.
Yeah, okay, the one day in the future.
Yep. Alright, so Unstable Portal, interesting card. I'm going to say it's not that good. In Arena, it's good, but in Constructed, I don't think it's good enough. Now, speaking of a card that I don't think is good enough, but good in Arena, Flame Cannon. 2 mana, common, deal 4 damage to a random enemy minion. This is not good and constructed. This is bad Frostbolt.
Yeah, I mean, so in Arena, this is like an extra tempo card. Because
Frostbolt.
In Arena, like there's lots of like vanilla value minions, like I mentioned in one of the previous videos. But in constructed, things tend to be a bit stickier. There tend to be fewer things that you would like to hit for 4 damage. Because there tends to be lots of spiders and harvest golems and stuff clogging up the board, so it's harder to get like a clean kill on the 4/4 that you dream of hitting the flame cannon.
Yeah, which doesn't actually exist, I might add.
And how many 2 mana removal spells do you really need in Mage?
2.
Like in a more aggressive tempo-ish Mage deck, you want to be playing 2 mana minions that you can actually use to get tempo to start off with.
It just like what's even weirder about Flame Cannon is I talked to a couple people about this. I won't mention names, but I talked to a couple people about this, and they're just like, "Oh, you can use it to go cultist," and I'm just like, "It's turn 4. You can Frostbolt hero power."
I mean, you play the turn 3 cultist, and then on their turn 3, like this did happen to me with Priest the other day, and it was pretty brutal. Where they played Flame Cannon on my cultist and then played a minion, and you fall behind in tempo and lose the game. But
Yeah, but is that really worth playing
how
a
likely is that
card
to
like
happen?
this in?
It may be that for some reason Mage needs really loads of turn two removal, but problem is like you can consider it in freeze mage as like the extra frostbolt, but the problem so that you don't have to waste your burn on early removal.
But
But
then you're playing a
with
card that
frostbolt,
can't
you
go to
need
the
to like
face.
specifically target the really important stuff like the knife jugglers that you absolutely must take out. And if it was a hit to the haunted creeper, then you're pretty screwed.
Yep.
So flame cannon is probably not reliable
I
enough
did
to.
actually play against Flame Cannon a few times. I've had my Ogre Brutes killed. I've also had my Searing Totem killed. I don't know how a totem on fire dies to a Flame Cannon, but okay. Uh, but yeah, it's been a mix of either good to bad. It's generally good in Arena because it's a worse Frostball and you will take a worse Frostball. That's just a thing. You will take a
Yeah.
worse Frostball if you can get it. Because Frostball's just ridiculous. But in Constructed, it's just like, even with the like, unless you're playing against Priest, you can always just Frostball something and leave it because it has the freeze on it. And then it also can go to the face, and it's also directed. Like,
Yeah.
Flame Cannon's only really better against cards with 5 life.
Oh, I mean, yeah, it's just certainly worse than frostbolt. Yeah,
And
I
Constructed is
mean,
so competitive in terms
yeah,
of card space. It just seems so hard to fit this card in that deck.
yeah. So not predicting much constructed play for the flame cannon.
I can give you there. But anyway, so Mage, it looks coming out of this that there's going to be a mech deck that's going to be pretty good.
Yeah, the one problem with the mech deck is then you kind of don't really have room for the secrets, and the fact that Mad Scientist is ludicrously OP is one of the best things about Mage at the
It
moment.
is going to
So
get worse because Mech Warper's a 2/3.
that's true.
And there's going to be Glaive Zuko, which kills it. And there's going to be more things that kill Mad Scientist. Mad Scientist is getting worse. It's still ridiculous, but it's getting
I mean,
worse.
yeah, I mean, getting a mirror into here from Mad Scientist is just
Bonkers, yeah. But, I mean, like, it's not necessarily mutually exclusive that you can't play Mad Scientist in that deck if you really think about it. Because a lot of the Mage deck were running Undertaker, but some of them weren't real. Some of them were running Mad Scientist without Undertaker. So it's
yeah,
actually perfectly feasible to run a mech deck with Mad Scientist.
it's true. But if you have that many 2 and 3 drops, can you fit in the Mad Scientist and all the secrets? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. I
You
haven't
might be
actually
able
tried
to.
to throw together a list, but
Worth testing. Anyway,
uh,
so
anyway,
that's pretty much it for the mages. A couple good
yep.
cards from mechs and a couple weird and interesting cards. Echo of Medivh is my favorite. My favorite mage card. It's not most playable mage card, but it's just hilarious.
Yeah, it's really cool. Mage got some solid
Nothing
cards.
is my least
Um,
favorite one. Anyway, thanks for watching the mage section, and we will see you in the next class.